She was my everything, and we were 2 months from our wedding. Then she vanished, claiming she needed a mental health retreat to deal with her anxiety. She ghosted me for weeks, leaving me in agony. When she came back, she was perfect, loving, attentive, and ready to get married. But I discovered the horrifying truth on her wildly popular Extramarital Affairs podcast. She hadn't been at a retreat. She'd been with her ex, and she was turning my pain into her profit, gaslighting millions of listeners in the process. She thought I was her clueless, supportive fiancé. She even asked me to run the sound for her live show. She never saw what was coming. This revenge story isn't just about a narcissistic fiancé. It's a storytime about betrayal, the trauma bond, and the day I stopped being a character in her story and started writing my own. This is the story of how I took back my life. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, go ahead and give it a like. It really helps me out. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future videos. Thanks a bunch. The silence is what I remember most. Not the screaming into a pillow kind of silence, but a deeper, more corrosive kind. It was the silence of a delivered text message that would never become a read one. The silence of a phone ringing out into an empty void. It was the sound of a future being deleted, one unanswered call at a time. My fiancée, Chloe, had been gone for 23 days. She hadn't died. She hadn't been abducted. She had, in her own words from a single cryptic text on day 1, gone on a solo mental health retreat upstate. She said she needed to unplug and find her center before our wedding. Our wedding, which was at that point less than 2 months away. The venue was booked, the deposit paid. My tuxedo was hanging in the closet, a dark ghost of a promise we'd made. After that first text, she vanished. Complete radio silence. My calls went to voicemail, the mailbox conveniently full. My texts, my emails, my frantic DMs, they all floated out into the digital ether, unanswered. I existed in a state of suspended animation in our sun-drenched Brooklyn apartment, the one we'd painstakingly decorated with vintage finds and overpriced plants. Every object was a memory, a landmine. The ceramic mug she made in a pottery class, the half-finished crossword puzzle on the coffee table, her scent that lingered on a pillow. My world had shrunk to the 4 walls of that apartment and the suffocating glow of my phone screen. Friends told me to give her space. She's always been high-strung, Alex, my best friend, Mark said, trying to be helpful. The wedding pressure probably just got to her. She'll be back. And that was the insidious part. It was plausible. Chloe was a creature of beautiful, brilliant anxiety. She was a rising star in the podcasting world. Her show, The Unspoken, was a phenomenon. In it, she gave a platform to supposedly anonymous stories of modern love, heartbreak, and betrayal, all delivered in her hypnotic, empathetic voice. She was a professional listener, a digital priestess for the heartbroken. So, the idea of her needing a dramatic escape to deal with her own overwhelming emotions, it fit the narrative. It fit the character I thought I knew. But 23 days? With no word? The contradiction was a physical weight in my chest. This was the woman who would text me if she was running 5 minutes late from the bodega. The woman who called me every night she was away on business. The cognitive dissonance was tearing me apart. The Chloe I loved would never do this to me. But she was doing this to me. Therefore, who was the Chloe I loved? On the morning of the 24th day, I was sitting at the kitchen island, staring into a cup of coffee I had no intention of drinking, when my phone buzzed. Her name flashed on the screen, not a text, a call. My heart hammered against my ribs. I fumbled to answer it, my thumbs slick with sweat. Chloe. My voice was a croak. Hey you, she said. Her voice was normal, warm, honeyed, completely untroubled. It was the voice that millions of people listened to every week, and the one that had been the soundtrack to my life for 4 years. I'm on a bus back. I'll be home in a couple of hours. That was it. No explanation, no apology. Just a casual, devastatingly normal announcement, as if she were returning from a weekend trip, not a month-long disappearance that had shredded my sanity. When she walked through the door 2 hours later, she looked incredible. Her skin was glowing, her eyes were bright. She looked rested and radiant. She dropped her bags, walked over to me, and wrapped her arms around my neck, burying her face in my shoulder. I am so sorry, baby, she murmured into my skin. I was a mess. I had a complete breakdown. I had to shut everything out to fix myself. For me. For us. She pulled back and looked at me, her big brown eyes swimming with what looked like sincere remorse. This is the part that's hardest to explain. The part where the trauma bond sinks its teeth in. A part of my brain was screaming, "This is not okay. This is cruel and insane." But that part was drowned out by the overwhelming, desperate relief of having her back. The physical anchor of her presence in the room calmed the storm that had been raging inside me for weeks. I had been so starved for her affection that I was willing to accept any crumbs she threw me. She told me a beautifully crafted story. A secluded cabin, no cell service, days spent meditating, journaling, hiking. Long sessions with a therapist she'd found in a nearby town. She said she'd finally confronted her fear of commitment, a fear she'd never once mentioned to me, and had emerged stronger, more certain than ever that I was her person. It was gaslighting of the highest order. She was presenting her cruelty as an act of love, her abandonment as a necessary step to strengthen our bond, and I let her. I held her, I told her it was okay, that I understood, that all that mattered was that she was home. I was a textbook case of learned helplessness. I had been in so much pain that I accepted the narrative that made the pain stop, no matter how illogical it was. The next few days were a blur of hyper-affection. She couldn't keep her hands off me. She wanted to talk about the wedding constantly, her enthusiasm more intense than ever. She booked appointments for cake tastings and flower arrangements. She was a whirlwind of renewed love, and she swept me up in it. The nagging, rational part of my brain was gagged and bound in the basement of my consciousness. I wanted to believe it. I needed to believe it. It was Mark who inadvertently set the bomb. We were grabbing a beer a week after Chloe's return. "Man, she seems great," he said, taking a sip. "Whatever she did up there, it worked." "Yeah," I said, a genuine smile on my face for the first time in a month. "It's like we're in a whole new honeymoon phase." "Good. You do deserve it, man. Especially after, well, you know." He paused, then said, "By the way, I listened to her latest podcast episode, the one she dropped while she was away. Jesus, it was brutal. That poor woman." I felt a slight chill. Chloe hadn't mentioned she'd released an episode. "Oh yeah? I haven't had a chance to listen yet." "What was it about?" "Some woman, Anna, I think she called her, who was engaged to this perfectly nice, stable guy but felt totally suffocated. She takes a break from him, reconnects with this wild, passionate artist ex-boyfriend, and has this crazy, life-altering affair. Realized she was choosing safety over passion. Heavy stuff. Chloe's so good at getting people to open up." I nodded, but the gears in my head were starting to turn, grinding with a rusty, ominous squeal. Suffocated. A nice, stable guy. Taking a break. That night I couldn't sleep. Chloe was breathing softly beside me, one arm thrown over my chest. I gently moved it, slipped out of bed and went into my office, closing the door. I pulled up her podcast, The Unspoken, and found the latest episode, episode 47, The Door Not Taken. The description read, "What happens when the life you've built feels like a cage you've built for yourself?" This week, Anna shares her story of leaving her fiancé to find out if the love she left behind was the one she was always meant for. I put on my best studio headphones, the ones I use for my own work as a sound engineer, and pressed play. Chloe's voice filled my ears, warm and intimate. "We're calling her Anna," she began. And Anna's story is one of quiet desperation. Then, another voice came on. A woman's voice, slightly distorted to protect her identity, but the cadence, the speech patterns, they were familiar. Anna started talking about her fiancé. "He's a good man," Anna said. "Everyone loves him. He's kind, he's supportive. He makes my coffee every morning in that one chipped blue mug, with exactly half a spoon of sugar. It's perfect. And that's the problem. It's also goddamn perfect. So predictable." I went cold. I looked over at the counter in our kitchenette, at the chipped blue mug I'd bought at a flea market 2 years ago. The mug I had made her coffee in that very morning, with half a spoon of sugar. My blood turned to ice. I kept listening, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Anna described an argument she'd had with her fiancé about moving to the suburbs. It was a verbatim transcript of a conversation Chloe and I had had a month before she left. She talked about a private joke involving a mispronounced word from a French film. A joke that only she and I shared. Then came the part about the ex, the passionate artist, the soul-shaking affair in a rain-swept cabin upstate. Every word was a hammer blow. It wasn't a story from an anonymous woman named Anna. It was Chloe's story. She hadn't been on a solo mental health retreat. She hadn't been meditating and journaling. She'd been with her ex-boyfriend, the painter she dated before me. She'd been having an affair. And the entire time she had been recording her journey for her podcast. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a production. She had taken the most intimate, sacred pieces of our life together and twisted them into content. She had monetized my pain, packaged my heartbreak for her listeners. She had gaslit me, our friends, and her entire audience, painting herself as a brave heroine on a quest for self-discovery, and me as the collateral damage. I wasn't her partner, I was her plot device. The perfectly nice but uninspiring fiancé. The villain in her story of empowerment. I ripped the headphones off, my hands shaking. I felt a surge of pure, white-hot rage that was so intense it made me dizzy. The woman sleeping peacefully in our bed wasn't my fiancée. She was a stranger. A predator who had been feeding on my love and trust to build her career. The helplessness I'd felt, the confusion, the codependent need for her to come back. It all burned away in that moment, incinerated by the fire of this monstrous deception. All that was left was a cold, hard clarity. She thought she was a great storyteller. She thought she was in control of the narrative. I sat there in the dark, the faint sounds of the city outside, and a plan began to form. A plan born from the wreckage of my heart. I was a sound engineer. I lived in the world of audio, of editing, of finding the truth between the noise. She had used her platform to humiliate me in secret. I would use my skills to expose her in public. She wanted a live season finale. She wanted to be a star. Fine. I would give her a finale she would never forget. The show was over. Not the unspoken, ours. And I was going to make sure she was the one left in silence. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, go ahead and give it a like. It really helps me out. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future videos. Thanks a bunch. The next morning, I made her coffee in the chipped blue mug. Half a spoon of sugar. I handed it to her with a smile and a kiss, and as she took it, I saw her for what she was. A narcissist so confident in her own lies that she couldn't imagine ever being caught. She looked at me, not as her partner, but as her audience. And I started my performance. I became the perfect fiancé she described in her podcasts, supportive, doting, and completely oblivious. My grief and rage didn't vanish. They crystallized. They became my fuel, a cold, clean burning engine driving me forward. Every loving gesture, every shared laugh was a calculated move in a chess game she didn't even know we were playing. I was establishing my final boundary, not with words, but with a slow, meticulous act of war. Chloe was in high gear, planning what she was calling the unspoken, the live taping of her podcast season finale. It was a huge deal. She'd booked a chic, mid-sized theater in Williamsburg, sold hundreds of tickets, and landed a major sponsorship deal with a wellness brand. This was her coronation, her ascent from podcasting niche celebrity to mainstream media figure. About 2 weeks before the show, she came to me, wrapping her arms around my neck as I was mixing a track for a client. "Baby," she cooed, "I have the biggest favor to ask. The sound guy the theater provides is a total hack. I can't risk it. The audio has to be perfect. Would you run the sound for me, please? No one understands my vision like you do." The sheer, breathtaking arrogance of it almost made me laugh out loud. She was literally asking the man she'd secretly betrayed and publicly cast as a passionless bore to be the architect of her crowning achievement. It was the ultimate testament to her belief in my stupidity. "Of course, Chloe," I said, turning to kiss her. "I'd be honored. Anything for you." And so the lamb she was leading to the slaughter was given the keys to the slaughterhouse. For the next 2 weeks, I lived a double life. By day, I was the devoted partner, helping her with guest lists and promotional materials. By night, I was a digital detective. I didn't need to hack her computer. I was her designated tech support. I knew all her passwords, the architecture of her cloud storage, her backup routines. It was pathetically easy. I found them in a folder labeled Raw Audio, S4, buried in a subfolder named Anna Sessions. It was everything. Hours of unedited recordings. There were the calls with her producer where they brainstormed how to frame the narrative. "We need to make him seem like a golden retriever," the producer said in one clip. "Loyal and sweet, but you'd never actually, want him." Chloe had laughed. "Exactly. The audience needs to root for me to leave. They need to see it as an act of self-love, not an act of betrayal. Then I found the other files. The ones not from her podcast recorder, but from her phone. Voice memos. Recordings of her and her ex, a painter named Julian. They were from the retreat. I heard my name. I heard them laughing about me, about how I was probably at home watering the plants and alphabetizing the spice rack, waiting for her. I heard the sounds of their affair, the intimate details she had so bravely shared as Anna. It was all there, proof. I spent my nights in my studio, headphones on, meticulously editing. I wasn't just a scorned lover, I was an artist. I took her loving voicemails to me from before she left and intercut them with the venomous clips of her and Julian. I took her public monologue about feeling trapped and laid it over audio of her laughing about how easy it was to deceive me. I pulled screenshots of texts, reservation confirmations for the cabin, even a credit card statement showing a charge for a romantic dinner for two on a night she was supposedly in silent meditation. I wove it all together into a seamless 5-minute presentation of pure, unadulterated truth. A symphony of her own lies. I called the final video file the narrative. The night of the live show, the theater was buzzing. The air was thick with anticipation and expensive perfume. Media people, influencers, and hundreds of her adoring fans filled the seats. I was in the sound booth at the back, a dark, elevated perch with a perfect view of the stage. Chloe was backstage getting ready. She'd kissed me before she went, her eyes shining. "Break a leg, baby," she'd whispered. "We're doing this." "Yes, we are," I'd said. The show began. Her producer gave a glowing introduction, and Chloe walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. She looked stunning in a sharp white pantsuit, a symbol of her purity, her bravery. She sat in a single armchair, a spotlight isolating her. She was a master performer. She started her monologue, a new story for the finale, about the importance of living your own authentic truth, no matter the cost. The audience was hanging on her every word. They wept with her, they nodded in solidarity. From my booth, I watched her on the monitor. I waited. I let her get to the emotional crescendo of her story, the point where her voice broke with perfectly rehearsed emotion. "And in that moment I knew," she said, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek, "that the most courageous thing you can ever do is choose yourself." That was my cue. I hit a single button. Her microphone went dead. Confusion rippled through the audience. Chloe tapped the mic, a frown creasing her brow. She looked over at me in the booth with a flash of annoyance. I just stared back, my face impassive. Then, the massive screen behind her, which had been displaying her the unspoken logo, flickered and went dark. A second later it lit up again, not with her logo but with a picture of us. A happy picture from our engagement party. And then my audio started to play. The sound was pristine, filling the theater. It began with Chloe's own voice, a sweet voicemail she'd left me a week before she disappeared. "I miss you already, baby. Counting down the seconds until I'm home with you." On screen, a text exchange between her and Julian appeared, time-stamped from the next day, planning their trip. The audio shifted. It was now Chloe's voice from the Anna episode saying, "I felt so trapped, so suffocated." I immediately cross-faded it with the raw audio of her laughing with Julian. "He has no idea," her voice echoed through the theater. "He's at home, probably organizing the bookshelves." The audience went from confused to utterly silent. You could have heard a pin drop. On stage, Chloe had frozen. The color drained from her face. She looked like a statue, her eyes wide with dawning, absolute horror. She was trapped in the spotlight with nowhere to run. I kept it going. The receipts, the hotel confirmations, all displayed on the giant screen while the audio of her lies played. The final blow was the clip of her and her producer. "The audience will eat this up," Chloe's voice said, crisp and clear. "The nice guy is always the best villain because no one sees it coming. It's pure gold." The 5-minute presentation ended. The screen went black. A heavy, suffocating silence hung in the air for a few seconds, and then it broke. Not with applause, but with a wave of murmurs, gasps, and the distinct sound of people getting up to leave. Her entire audience, her entire career was walking out on her. I looked down at the stage one last time. Chloe was still standing there, a solitary, pathetic figure under the glare of the lights. Our eyes met across the theater. There was no anger in her face anymore. Just the hollow, empty shock of a narcissist who had been so thoroughly, so publicly unmasked. She had built her kingdom on a narrative, and I had burned it to the ground with the truth. I didn't stick around to see the rest. I calmly packed up my personal equipment, walked out of the sound booth, and left the theater. I didn't look back. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic for her. Videos from the audience went viral. The sponsors pulled out. Her network dropped her podcast. Her name became synonymous with fraud and humiliation. She tried to spin it, of course, claiming I was an abusive ex who had doctored the evidence. But the proof was too overwhelming. I had used her own words, her own recordings. No one believed her. I never spoke to her again. I moved out of the apartment that week while she was hiding out at a friend's place. I built a new life. I started my own production company, and ironically, the infamy of that night gave me a strange kind of credibility. I became the guy who understood the power of a true story. I don't think about her much anymore. The revenge wasn't what healed me. It was the decision to act. The decision to stop being her supporting character. The decision to take back my own voice. She wanted to tell a story about a woman who chose herself. In the end, that's exactly what happened. It just wasn't her story, it was mine.